Welcome to another exciting episode of the Business of Digital podcast, featuring your hosts, Matt Siltala and Dave Rohr. Hey guys, excited to be here with you on another Business of Digital episode. Today, Dave, how's it going, Dave?
It is going swell.
Swell, I like that.
Swell's the word, I don't know. I just try to pick a different one every time.
That's funny. I never noticed that, but... we hope that everyone else that's listening to us is having a swell day. What we wanted to talk about, because, we like doing this on the Business of Digital podcast. We like going into just things that Dave and I are going to be doing, sessions we're going to be talking at conferences coming up, and just kind of giving viewers an opportunity to learn a little bit more, or people that are potentially going to be coming to our sessions. And we did this in weeks past with the session that I'm going to be talking at Pubcon with Casey Gillette and others. And so what we wanted to get into today, Dave, is your Pubcon session, your data-driven content marketing audit session.
Which is in the same salon and same day and same everything right after you.
So basically, I have to be really nice to you in my session, and I can't say anything, or you'll be able to follow it up with, even more awkwardness or funniness. I don't know what the word is.
Yeah, especially if the people were there, because they sometimes don't move. They will get to hear my rebuttal.
Yes, they will. So, I guess more than anything, again, for those that are doing a little bit of research on Pubcon, trying to figure out what sessions they're going to go to. Maybe just jump into why you think they need to be in this session. Okay, just let's jump into it and go from there.
Well, the other speakers are awesome. So Ashley Ward, who is a strategist and does a lot of talking and gives lots and lots of talks lately last year for SEMrush or SEMrush. I always forget. I change how I call it. SEMrush. So she works at SEMrush, and she'll be talking not a lot about SEMrush, but just about data. And Brian McDowell, who is about an inch or two taller than me.
About the only one that you don't feel like you're towering over, right?
Him, Simon Hesseltine, and Lauren Baker are like the only three. And Sean McGinnis up in Utah, but I don't know if he'll be there. Those are the only four that really make
around
me
you
short.
guys.
Yeah, we make you look really short, which is pretty hard to do. But Brian is from Bloomreach, and he's a big data guy as well, and then myself. So we're all going to be talking just, how to audit your content marketing to figure out what works and what's not.
One of the things the reason why I thought that this was awesome, the way that it just happened to work out this way, that you're going to be after the session that we do, is because a lot of what Casey and I talk about, and I think the other presenter as well, like we give more of the case studies and examples and the visual concepts and here's what's worked really well. And then I think the thing that's awesome about what you're going to be able to do, and for people that are in these sessions, they're going to see all this amazing content and ideas and case studies, and then boom, here's the data. Here's the reason why this works. Here's the backbone of it. And anyway, sorry to interrupt, but that's just kind of the thought that I had while we were chatting about this. It's going to be awesome for anyone that's in the session.
And I have not seen Ashley's slides, but Brian actually shared them in a tweet a week or two ago, partly to taunt, I think, Ashley and I. But I mean, he's got 30 slides, and I know he's not done, but he gives like a really detailed walkthrough of what is it? Like a gap analysis of using, I think he uses even SEMrush, but he uses basically scraping some ranking data and doing a gap analysis between your competitor and you to give you new content ideas. Awesome. And to see what content of yours is actually doing well. And I mean, half of his presentation is, he's also got some other interesting kind of things that he dives into because of just what Bloomreach does. They have a lot of data. So he'll be talking about a lot of data, but it's just interesting to see how other people, and for me, it's always interesting to talk to other people to see, how do you walk through and understand which content is producing well, what you want it to. And there's times where as a consultant, I can go in and I can go, here's what I see from the data. And, this session is going to walk you through how to grab that data. But there's also the questions of, what was the goal of this content? Was the goal of this content to promote an internal product because you needed a blog post for your email newsletter, and because you have 500 or 5,000 clients and you needed to alert them on a new feature for your product? Then whether that gets a lot of links or a lot of anything, you don't care. That wasn't the purpose of that content.
Right.
And I think knowing, when you go through any sort of audit, knowing what the purpose was, and if you don't have an initial purpose, then it becomes kind of muddy. It's like, oh, what was, this content that was created 2 years ago? Why did we do this?
Yeah, and I think like whenever you're talking about that, the only kind of question that I would have for you is, or I don't know if it's a question or a statement that you can maybe talk on, would be like, because a lot of times with social and when you're creating content, whether it be an infographic or a video or whatever it might be, I think a lot of times people like have a hard time convincing the higher ups, or quote unquote C-suite. And so is this where the data can come in, where you're showing these guys specific examples of how this worked and how well it did and things like that?
Yes. And what I often like to do is like a GetStat or Authority Labs for daily ranking data for keywords that, for everything. You can get a lot of stuff from your Google Search Console, but if there's keywords that you're just not ranking for really well, or you're not ranking at all for, you're not going to get any data on it, but maybe your competitors are. So I always like to create dashboards and snapshots using daily ranking data, but rounding it up into business lines or product lines, and showing comparisons of what the shelf space is for your competitors versus you. And you take anywhere from 10 to 30 keywords. So it could be categories and products within a certain business line, and you group them, and then you show your movement, but also your competitors, because there's times internally or as a consultant where we're down this month, and it's like, well, all of our competitors are down even more. So it's not a win, but it's not as bad as you think it is. And also, we did some digging, and here's what happened in that business line, in that specific vertical.
Well, and I like
and that's
it because,
data.
Well, yeah, you can't argue with the data. I mean,
you cannot
it is
like
what it is.
You cannot like it, but if you have that kind of year over year, or if you can show that we're down, month over month we're down, but there was the August 1st update, we got hit by that, but year over year we're actually up, and then you start going in again, data that we can't really talk about, but you start talking about our lead data's up, our sales data's up, our average order size is up because of all these other things we've done. Our conversion rate for this page is actually up, or doing these types of audits, you can use it for a competitive audit to see what content is working for someone else. You can understand your own content, but it's also interesting because you'll start to see outliers. And I'm working with someone right now where they're actually having they're doing a big redesign, and they actually had someone come in, and part of that big redesign is they're really doing a deep dive into the analytics, and we're like, ooh, cool, we'll see what they find out.
Yeah.
We don't even have budget or time or resources to do it, and they have an analytics person, that's really all they do. And they came back with some interesting stuff, nothing really groundbreaking. And then there was this one page that came up, and they were like, there's a page that really doesn't make sense, but it is getting a ton of traffic. What's going on? And it's like, wow, it's not a page we kind of forgot was even on the site. It's a SaaS solution, and somehow it had been associated with a site link for login. Because the page kind of talks about something about logging in or something like that. And so that page is actually showing up as a site link when you do a brand search. and it's just getting a ton of people that are not the intent of that page and the solution of that page is not what those people want.
Right.
So by doing this content audit, we figured that out, and we're like, whoa, it doesn't get enough that it would show up on our radar. It's not driving leads, it's not driving sales or links or anything. But by doing this audit, we actually figured out that there was a problem with this page was too well optimized for something that it shouldn't have been. And so now it's like, oh, well, now we need to fix that. And, I forget how many
SEO is
people...
over-optimizing something.
Yeah, I actually had to de-optimize something for a nonprofit in the past because they were ranking for sex terms.
Oh,
yeah,
not good.
They were a nonprofit that was supposed to help kids, but because they talked about
Which is yet another very good reason to do these audits, for finding stuff like that.
You find all sorts of crazy stuff. And it's also interesting because we all have biases, and there's certain pages that maybe used to perform well and now don't. And it's like, well, why? And then you start to ask yourself questions when you start to look at the data and say, okay, it's got links, over time, how many keywords did it rank for? Okay, well, it's really not getting any traffic now. Like, oh, well, in the last update, all of the internal links disappeared because we did a site redesign, and it used to have a secondary link in the navigation, and now those disappeared. And basically it's an orphan page because we never linked to it in blog posts. We never linked to it here, and it's got no links on the site. So no wonder why it's kind of slowly dying. And that's all stuff that you can get from doing an audit. So even if you haven't done an audit, or you're not attending this session, start to think about doing some sort of audit. And we'll walk you through tools. But
yeah, that's the follow-up question I was going to have is I don't know if you wanted to share any here or give them teasers for the session or whatnot.
Oh my gosh, so many tools.
That's all I'm wondering is anyone that's listening to this session that maybe can attend or that they're curious, okay, well, I'd love to start doing a content audit, but how do I even go about it, Dave?
So many tools, so little time.
High level, I guess.
Yeah, I know. But just from the start, free tools would be your analytics, Google Search Console. You can hook yourself up to Majestic if you have an account for your site, just to get your links for your site from Majestic. Which is, I think, a really cool kind of lead gen idea. But it works. And, if you have an account set up with your Google Search Console, use that to create an account on Majestic. You can get your own link data. So you get link data from Google and Majestic at least to understand what pages have links. And then there's Ahrefs and SEMrush has some link data, but I don't really look at them for that. But then you can use an SEMrush or Ahrefs or BuzzSumo to start getting link data, your social shares to understand what content has resonated well, if that's what the goal was, and start putting it all together. I'm trying to think of some other tools. SimilarWeb will kind of give you some data, but for your own, that's usually only if you're doing competitive stuff. I like to use that. BuzzSumo as well will help you internally, but again, if you're doing a content audit on your competitors to see what's doing well, BuzzSumo, SEMrush, Ahrefs are all really great resources.
And we will, anything we talk about here, guys, we'll include in the post as well. So that's great. The thing that more than anything, just talking about this, Dave, and just your session and getting people excited about Pubcon. Again, just going back to just talking about content in general, and I always talk about the best ways to go about it. I think sometimes this is the part of it where people are I don't know, I don't want to say you lose some people, but it's much funner, just because of how we are as humans, and we're so distracted, and our attention spans and stuff. It's easy for us to just focus on the shiny stuff, the fun videos, or the fun infographics, or the quick funny witted memes and things like that. But the thing that people need to realize is these things actually have purposes, and it's like you and I talk about all the time, this content has to have a purpose behind it, And then what you're talking about here is once you do all this and you have all this out there and you're producing this content, like you're basically just going to be wasting your time and hitting your head against a brick wall if you don't understand this data and pay attention to it, pay attention to the content that's really working, pay attention. If you've spent thousands of dollars on continue to produce certain types of content and it's doing nothing for you, then you need to figure something out that is going to work. And I think going this direction with auditing and what you're going in, with your talking about with your session is absolutely needed. It may not be as shiny or as fun to talk about, but you see what I'm saying?
Yep. Well, and the one thing is I've done these types of audits for competitors to understand, but also internal. And another thing that's always interesting to do is to look at, even at a very high level, your crawling and indexation. Like, how big is your site? Sometimes most people, when I start working with them, I'm like, how many SKUs do you have? How many services do you have? How many products do you have? It's like, oh, well, we have 20 categories and we have 100 SKUs. And it's like, okay, well, so you should have 200 pages on your site? I'm like, in your sitemap, I see 20. In Google, I see 5,000. And then you start to kind of look and go, and I even have a slide about it. It's like, how many different sources can you look at, and how many of them are the same and different?
Yeah.
And it's interesting when you start to look at that data, and it's like, okay, well, maybe we have orphan pages out there. Maybe we have some crazy faceted navigation that's getting away. And it doesn't just have to be about your content team. It's a technical SEO thing at that point.
Yeah.
That's now you have a different to do.
Well, I guess, Dave, we don't want to give up too much of the goods because we want people to come to the session. And I guess the final thought that I would have, or at least in my conclusion for this, would be anyone that's thinking about going to your session. One of the benefits is at the end of this you have a Q&A, and so if you have a site audit question, as far as content marketing audit type stuff, if you have any kind of audit questions, you can actually talk to these guys about it. And these are some three of the most brilliant minds in the industry as far as content marketing audits are concerned, and so you have their attention, you have the ability to chat with them and to go up to them and talk to them afterwards and ask the questions. And so, my plug would be, hey, attend the session, even if they don't talk about something that you're specifically wondering, go up and talk to them or ask the question and raise it with them. And this is one thing that I love about Pubcon is, we love when we get these questions that we can help people with. So those are kind of my final thoughts. Final thoughts from you, Dave?
I don't know about brilliant minds, but I know there's at least two smart people up there.
Oh, come on.
And the other thing is Brian at Bloomreach and Ashley at SEMrush both have access to tons of data.
Oh, man.
And they will share some stuff. And so it's not like, I work with small, medium, and in the past I've worked with large sites, and, I can talk about what I'm seeing, but they have huge access, huge data amount that they can dig into and look at trends and stuff. And Brian, I think, touches on some of that. And I'm sure, I haven't seen what Ashley's deck looks like, but I'm sure SEMrush, they scrape Google, they scrape all sorts of stuff. They have so much data.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure she's going to bring some of that to it as well. So, just from trends and stuff and huge amounts of data that we're going to be talking about, it'll be interesting to see what everyone kind of brings to their deck.
All right. Very cool. So, again, just one last shout out and plug. Make sure that you guys hit up mine and Dave's session.
Get a good seat at Matt's and then just stay there.
Yeah, exactly. Just come in, get a great seat, and make yourself comfortable, and you're going to hear a lot of brilliant speakers. So, all right. Well, for Dave Rohr with Northside Metrics, I'm Matt Siltala with Avalanche Media. We appreciate you guys taking the time to check this session out. And as always, if there's any questions or anything that you have about Pubcon or audits or anything that we talked about, please, fill out the form, let us know, contact us. Dave and I are both easily reachable on Twitter and all of the online stuffs. We're about as easy to get a hold of as possible. So thanks, guys, and look forward to hearing from you in the future. Bye-bye.
Thanks.